The rain poured endlessly over Los Angeles that night. In the crowded street outside the America's Voice audition hall, a young Filipino boy named Elian Cruz clutched his worn-out guitar, its wood chipped and strings slightly rusted. He was 16, shy, and barefoot. His shoes had been stolen 2 nights ago from the park bench where he slept. Yet his eyes held something rare, hope, glowing softly beneath the streetlights. Elian had crossed oceans not for fame, but for a promise. 2 years earlier, his mother, a street vendor in Manila, had whispered before her passing, "When you sing, the world will listen, Anak. Your voice will be your prayer." Those words had carried him here, to the land where dreams were said to come true. Inside the massive audition hall, glittering lights, loud laughter, and expensive clothes filled the air. Contestants rehearsed nervously, some surrounded by families, others by managers. Elian stood alone, soaked, unnoticed, hugging his guitar as though it were a piece of his mother's soul. "Hey, kid," called a voice. A young woman in a red volunteer jacket smiled kindly. Her name was Lila Adams, a 21-year-old student helping at the auditions. "Are you auditioning?" Elian nodded timidly. "Yes, ma'am. I just want to sing." When he spoke, his voice trembled, not from fear, but hunger. Lila noticed his hands shaking, his clothes thin and damp. Without a second thought, she took off her hoodie and wrapped it around his shoulders. "Don't call me ma'am," she smiled. "I'm Lila. You're freezing. Come on, let's get you something warm before your turn." She led him backstage, sharing half her sandwich and a cup of hot coffee. It wasn't much, but to Elian, it felt like heaven. He whispered softly, "Thank you, Lila. No one's ever been this kind to me here." She shrugged, hiding the warmth rising in her cheeks. Everyone deserves kindness, especially someone brave enough to chase a dream. When Elian's number was finally called, he stepped onto the blinding stage. The judges, 3 world-famous musicians and a guest celebrity, looked at him curiously. He looked too small for the stage, too fragile, like a shadow in a world of stars. One judge, a stern-looking woman named Victoria Miles, raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to sing, young man?" Elian smiled faintly. "A song my mother loved, Hotel California." The audience murmured. A few chuckled. But when Elian began to play, silence fell. His fingers danced across the strings, slow and tender, and his voice, soft yet piercing, filled the hall like a prayer carried on the wind. "On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair." His tone wasn't perfect, it was pure. Every note carried a story of loss, love, and survival. As he sang, images painted themselves in the audience's minds. A boy walking barefoot through rain, a mother whispering hope, a stranger offering warmth. Lila stood backstage, tears streaming silently. By the final verse, something miraculous happened. The crowd, once restless, sat utterly still. Elian's voice cracked slightly when he reached, "You can check out any time you like," but instead of breaking, it soared higher, trembling with raw emotion. When the last chord faded, the hall exploded in applause. Judges wiped tears. Victoria Miles stood, speechless, before slamming her hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down. Elian froze, clutching his guitar, unable to process what had happened. Lila ran onto the stage, her eyes shining. The crowd chanted his name. He looked up toward the lights, whispering, "Mama," they listened. In the weeks that followed, Elian became an overnight sensation. The video of his performance spread across the internet. "Poor Filipino boy sings, Hotel California, judges cry and hit." Golden buzzer, reaching millions worldwide. But beyond the fame, something deeper blossomed. Lila stayed by his side, not as a volunteer, but as a friend, then something more. She helped him navigate interviews, fed him, made him laugh again. Elian, in turn, wrote songs inspired by her kindness. One night, under a quiet Los Angeles sky, he confessed, "Lila, I never believed I could love again. But when you smiled at me that day, I felt home." She took his hand gently. "You don't need fame to be loved, Elian. You already are." He smiled, eyes glistening. "You're my golden buzzer, Lila." Months later, during the finale, Elian performed an original song titled, "USA Ki Dua, the Prayer of the USA." It was a tribute to every stranger who had ever shown kindness to a dreamer far from home. His lyrics spoke of borders that disappear when hearts connect, of love that heals hunger, and of voices that rise, not for fame, but for hope. When he finished, the audience stood as one. Even the coldest hearts melted. Among them sat children, parents, and strangers, each wiping away tears, reminded of something pure, that one small act of kindness can change a life forever. After the show, Elian and Lila walked quietly along the ocean pier. The world was different now, brighter, softer. She leaned her head on his shoulder, whispering, "So, what's next for you, superstar?" He smiled, gazing at the waves. "I just want to sing for those who feel unseen, and maybe, sing for you." Lila laughed softly, holding his hand tighter. Then the world's about to fall in love again. And under the California stars, the poor Filipino boy who once sang to survive, now sang for love, for humanity, for the prayer his mother had left behind. Because sometimes, the most powerful songs are born not from talent, but from kindness.